So, yep, we're gonna have to go ahead and go to 6 here. Our opponent has kept their 7, but we can keep the 6. Not looking for that land, though. And there's a Sunken Hollow to kick things off for our opponent. I like leading on the Evolving Wilds to start. And that way, we'll have 2 basic lands in play, so we can pretty much get all of our lands into play untapped. Alright, so it looks like our opponent is casting a Relentless Dead here. Interesting. So we drew a copy of Jace for the turn, so we might as well play that here. And that was one of our better draws. Hopefully our opponent does not have a removal spell for our Jace, Friend's Prodigy. And it looks like we're probably up against the blue-black zombie deck, but we'll see. And one thing about Relentless Dead that a lot of people may forget is it does have Menace. So we're not going to be blocking that one. It looks like a follow-up Relentless Dead as well. So we're drawing a lot of lands at the moment. Oh, let's go ahead and fire in this Oath of Jace. And now we've got some options. Anguished Unmaking is a reasonable answer to these Relentless Deads. I don't think we're going to want to cast another Oath of Jace right away. So I'm fine with discarding that and a land here. Now our actual Jace Vryn's Prodigy, that is threatening to flip next turn. Although, okay, our opponent does have a Grasp of Darkness for it. That's a pretty timely draw. Languish is going to be able to clear away these Relentless Deads. And to be fair, even though it's, yes, it may seem, oh, you were lucky to draw Languish, we're 15 cards deep in our deck. So we're actually favored to have drawn Languish by this point in the game. And we're setting up nicely for Ob Nixilis next turn. There's a Crypt Breaker from our opponent, but it looks like our opponent is a little bit mana screwed here. And this is the point where it just feels like the Esper deck has already taken control of the game. But we'll see. I mean, the blue-black zombies deck is capable of a lot. Here's a Diregraph Colossus, so that's actually going to come into play as a 5/5 creature. Don't see that one too often. We've got a Sunken Hollow on top. I think we actually want to just keep this on top. We can cast the Sorin in our hand this turn, although we drew another land anyways, but getting the Sorin into play with Ob Nixilis alongside it is really nice. And it does mean we're going to go ahead and go down to 1 loyalty on our Sorin in order to get rid of that Colossus here. We'll see if our opponent has anything else. Okay, it's a Liliana. So that could get back the Diregraph Colossus, but it looks like our opponent instead is electing to tick up the Liliana. And we've got 2 Dark Petitions on top, so we'll keep those. We can draw one off Sorin to deal 5 to our opponent. Then we're going to continue ticking up our Obnixilis. And things are looking quite nice. 4 card types in the graveyard right now. But we can get Emrakul. We're not that far away from it at this point. And let's go ahead and just Anguish them, making away this Liliana. Sorry, we actually can't Anguish them, making away the Liliana. My fault on that. Was thinking we had Spell Mastery. We do not, but that's okay. Still don't mind our play. The Dark Petitions are a little bit worse when they don't have Spell Mastery. Normally this deck does have Spell Mastery almost all the time when you get to the late game, so this is a bit unusual. But we're still very happy to have Emrakul in our hand. We're just basically 1 or 2 turns away from being able to cast it, so. This Liliana that our opponent has, our opponent could tick it down to return something from the graveyard, but I don't think that's really going to be that impactful. But it looks like that is what the play is going to be here. And the Relentless Dead, it looks like, has returned. Okay. So we've got Ruinous Path and Narset. Pretty happy to have both of those cards on top of our deck, actually. And now if we do want to cast the Dark Petition, we actually have Spell Mastery now. So we got the Narset into our hand. And we can actually play the Narset here. And we can rebound this Ruinous Path if we want to. Sure, why not? This is basically the Voltron getting assembled, as some would call it. Just 3 Planeswalkers in play, plus the Oath. So now we can scry 3. We're going to have Emrakul coming down next turn, most likely. Got 4 card types in our graveyard at the moment, and 8 lands. That Crypt Breaker is just simply a juicy target for our Ruinous Path that has been is going to get copied off of the Narset here, or rebounded, I should say. And yeah, I mean, what our opponent's doing is just pretty underwhelming here at this stage in the game. Alright, so yeah, we definitely want the basic land. We can keep these on top. We're going to plus Sorin so that the other Sorin gets revealed, and our opponent is then going to take a bunch of damage off of that reveal, going down to 5. And yeah, that's gonna do it for this game. Our opponent finally had enough at that point. So looking at our sideboard against the blue-black zombie deck, we definitely want Kalitas. Kalitas is great against cards like Relentless Dead, for instance. Don't need to do all that much. Transgress is also nice. Being able to exile our opponent's cards is particularly good in this matchup. We can shave some stuff, like shaving one Dark Petition is fine. Languish is a card that we can shave on. And we actually do want our second copy of Liliana the Last Hope. So I'm fine with going down to 2 Languishes and cutting this ultimate price. And that seems pretty reasonable. And it looks like we're going to be mulliganing again. But our 6-card hand is acceptable. Transgress the Mind is our top card, which is interesting. We've got 2 4-mana black spells that we really want to get to. Think we just want to put this on the bottom, but it's very close. That decision was very close. But we definitely want to hit Kalitas or Languish on turn 4, and putting the Transgress on the bottom of our deck maximizes the chances we will be able to do that. Looks like our opponent does not have a Crypt Breaker. And of course we drew the swamp. So knowing that the swamp was on top, we would probably, if we could go back, we would take the Transgress, but that's not how Magic works. You have to make the decision with the information you have at the time. And so now we've drawn consecutive lands. So we're really hoping that this Jace stays in play and we're able to loot and filter through and find exactly what we want here. So our opponent has a Relentless Debt on turn 3. Not really that worried about it at the moment. So yeah, if we had the Transgress, we would definitely have cast it here. So hopefully that does not come back to bite us. We do have Kalitas, which we can cast next turn. We're probably not going to want to cast Languish before Kalitas, but our opponent could have removal for Kalitas in hand. So interesting. Just going to be a pass here. Well, we're going to go ahead and play Kalitas. Our opponent could very easily have something with 6 cards in hand, but let's go ahead and run it out there. We also don't want our opponent to use removal on Jace either, so if it gets hit by a removal spell, so be it. If not, we're just very likely to win the game on the back of Kalitas. But, okay, there's a Ruinous Pass, so it did get hit by a removal spell. So here's an Oath of Jace, and we also have a Slumgar's Command in hand. So a couple of options here. I think we want to just play the Oath of Jace first. That way our Jace Vryn's Prodigy is going to be able to flip. And we found some pretty nice stuff here. So I don't think we actually need the second Oath. We'd rather have an additional card type in our graveyard. And do we want the Slumgar's Command? I think we can afford to discard it here. And our opponent is once again in a bit of a pickle. We've got 4 card types in hand, so we're still a little bit away from being able to cast Emrakul. And there's a lot to be said for getting rid of the Relentless Dead while our opponent is tapped out. And it looks like, whoops, I clicked through. I should have ticked our Jace up, but okay, it's gonna get hit by Ruinous Path, so either way, Jace gone. And we're just gonna play the waiting game. We've got a Languish, and we're working towards Emrakul. Okay, Jissa and Jeroff. Very interesting. So, that is a card we can Languish away here if we want to. And I think we do want to. That's also going to get us up to 5 card types in our graveyard. So we actually just need 1 more land to be able to cast this Emrakul. And our opponent really is playing the full-on zombie theme deck here. Alright, there's the land, so here goes nothing. Let's see what our opponent is working with. Our opponent does have 5 cards in hand here, so, you know, not too sure what they're thinking about, but we'll see. Alright, let's see what's going on in this zombie deck, this blue-black zombie deck. Alright, so here we are. We've got Compelling Deterrence, return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. We've got a Distended Mindbender, Turn Aside. So, an interesting hand to say the least. Let's see what our draw is. Okay, it's going to be a Swamp here. So, we can't actually do that much with this hand, but we're also in a spot where we're pretty happy about what our opponent actually does have. So, one play that we can make is to cast this Compelling Deterrence, and it just becomes a question of which permanent we want to target. And I think we may actually want to target our Oath of Jace. So let's do that just so we can rebuy it. Alright, let's do it. And we're going to tick down Liliana here without returning anything. And that's it. That's all we really need to do for our opponent's turn. Reason being is that we have a 13/13 that our opponent currently doesn't have an answer for. So unless our opponent top decks something like a Ruinous Path, we should be able to take the game down. It's only going to be if our opponent does draw something that things could definitely become interesting at that point. But while our opponent's deck is grindy and has a lot of gas, it doesn't seem to have an answer to Emrakul at the moment. So even with the Lily ticking up on Emrakul, it's still a 2-turn clock for us. So we can go ahead and cast the Oath of Jace, which we return to our hand. So, okay, we got to decide what to discard. We can go ahead and just discard a couple of lands here. And we'll attempt to cast this turn aside. And we can grab the Distended Mindbender that our opponent has. This attack is not going towards Liliana. It's going to go straight at our opponent. And we'll see. If our opponent doesn't draw anything here, this should be the game. Alright, it's going to be Jissa and Geralf, so we'll see. Not too sure that there's anything that really our opponent could mill. Our opponent milled a Ruinous Path, but that's the card that you need to actually draw. Can't get it back with Liliana. And so it looks like these creatures are more or less irrelevant. And we're not going to miss the attack, so this match should be pretty much over. Hiya! We are not going to be attacking Lily. And yep,